Did you always want to be a writer?
No, I wanted to be a lawyer, of course, and then I wanted to be a real estate developer, and then I wanted to go into advertising. But my father, who only gave me one piece of advice in my entire life, which was not to become a journalist. So that was the last thing.
When you were how old and what were the circumstances?
What, they told me not to become a journalist?
Yeah.
21.
Uh-huh. And what was his reason?
I think he said there was that there was no future in it, which is not incorrect. And I think he thought of it, he's English. And so, in England, when you think of journalism, you think of the hacks of Fleet Street. You think of people getting drunk at 4 o'clock and hacking into people's phones. I mean, at the time, they weren't hacking into phones, but there was that general. And I think the notion that I would do that seemed appalling to him. So I think that's what he was getting at. Don't go work for the Daily Mirror.
Americans born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s to parents who believed that they were working to provide a better life for their children by sending them to college and so forth, have hit a wall in the past 4 years. The advantaged middle-class Americans have suddenly become disadvantaged by the current economic and political environment. How can the formerly advantaged regain their ability to build a better future? Can they? How will they rebound? How do you see Occupy Wall Street?
That's a very interesting question. My biggest, the most sobering statistic I read recently was that the total amount of outstanding student loan debt in America right now is in excess of $1 trillion, right? And that's a lot of money, and particularly in an environment where the likelihood of getting a job that allows you to pay that back in good order is shrinking. And then you combine that, you layer on top of that the level of sort of credit card debt and mortgage debt, and you have an explanation of why we are where we are. And so one point is that it goes to my earlier point that our educational system is now, at the high end, is completely out of step with the job market, right? When the job market is as it is, schools can't cost $40,000 a year anymore. That's just insane, right? And the kind of arms race that schools are involved in and continue to be involved. I mean, if you walk through Washington Square Park and you look at those, the words escape me to describe the architecture that has been inflicted upon that once beautiful urban area. But anyway, you look at what they've been doing in the name of quote-unquote progress, spending $1 kajillion. And by the way, do you know that on a per capita basis, graduates of NYU have more student loan debt than anyone else? Do you know this?
No.
Kind of fascinating. And you know why, right? When you walk through there and you see that's what they're doing. They take all this money and they put up these increasingly hideous buildings, and then they just ratchet up the tuition even more. That stuff doesn't work anymore. That's a 1990s notion that I'll build the most expensive and beautiful boutique-like college money can buy, and I'll bring in the Four Seasons to run it. And then you'll recoup your money because when you go out in the job market, people will pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, right? It doesn't work anymore. It's over. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is a small part of it, but the educational system has got to wake up to that fact, that the model has changed. And you cannot produce generation after generation of recent college graduates who enter their adulthood encumbered with mortgages, right?
Right.
Mortgage-level debts. So that's one thing, and I don't think they get it.
But this business of how can the formerly advantaged regain their ability to build a better future? Can they?
I think they can if we start scaling back. We're going through a difficult period, and when in difficult periods, the way that you ought to respond is by making the engines of social mobility cheaper, right? More accessible. In the Depression, what did this country do? We opened up lots of really low-priced educational opportunities for people so that when the Depression ended, they would be in a position to exploit the economic upturn. That's what we should be doing now, right? But I don't see that. I see us doing I see the same old game being played out of ratcheting up the kind of production values of not just higher education, of all education. Stop it, right? It's got to be scaled back. Don't be buying stuff for schools. Stop buying stuff for schools, right? Don't buy computers. Stop, right? This is not the time to do that.
And in terms of the Occupy Wall Street part of the question, as we've discussed, it's so diffuse, it's hard to know exactly what to say. But is there potential for something that diffuse to be funneled into something productive and succinct? And if so, who's going to funnel it?
Well, I think they have to get angrier.
Angrier.
Angrier, yeah. At a certain point, anger doesn't necessarily mean violence.
Right.
But I do think that there is a weird absence of anger on the part of people who are unhappy with the status quo. And there's even an absence of anger in our president, which I think would be appropriate for him to get angry with the way things have gone. There's nothing wrong with standing up and saying, this is bullshit, right? I inherited a mess. I'm trying to clean it up. And I need your help. Nothing wrong with saying that. And we shouldn't, liberals, and I count myself among them now, thankfully, after seeing the light 25 years ago, shouldn't let the kind of conservatives co-opt all of the anger in the system, right? I don't understand why we seem so passive. There's something about anger that I think we have, well, not just can be productive, that we have difficulty kind of imagining and conceiving of. And it ought to be more, it ought to be a more real consideration.